So in order to get started with Women Who Lead, I would very much like to bring up my friend who's going to moderate this wonderful panel. Emily Parkhurst is the founder and CEO of Formidable. Come on up here, Emily. Woo. So Emily is the founder and CEO of Formidable, a media membership company that produces a variety of newsletters and podcasts on behalf of members and clients. The flagship Formidable newsletter shares the daily news through a woman's lens, instead of a traditional male default lens. Emily has spent 20 years in media, including time as the president of, can I get my scroll, please? Thank you. President and publisher of the Puget Sound
Business Journal.
Puget Sound Business Journal. See, and the interim president of the Cornish College of Arts. Everyone, another huge round of applause for your moderator, Emily Parkhurst.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Devin. It's great to be here, and it's great to see other ladies in pink and orange. We got a little color in the audience. It's great. Well, before I introduce our wonderful panel today, we're going to have a special introductory session here. I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to sit down with Vivian Eickhoff, who is the general manager of Microsoft Global Events. She's not physically able to be here because she is actually running an event in another area at the time. So we recorded a session with her at the Microsoft Studios. I don't know how many of you have been to the Microsoft Studios. It's a pretty impressive space, I have to say. It was my first time there. It was a great opportunity to check out that space. If you ever get a chance to go over there, do it. So Vivian and I chatted a little bit about her role, how she rose through the ranks, and to run one of our region's largest events businesses. So we're going to show just a brief snippet from that interview. The full interview will be available to attendees at some point. But this is just going to be a sort of a short snippet to get us started, and then I'll invite our panelists up here. So I'd invite whoever's in charge of the video to go ahead and roll it.
Well, Vivian, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, I am too. So thank you for coming by and coming to our production studios here at Microsoft to do this today.
Oh my gosh, it is truly beautiful. This is really a treat. Well, I was hoping you could just start. Tell us a little bit about what you do here.
Happy to. So I lead our event production and studios team here at Microsoft. And so we are responsible for the development, the production, and the execution of global events for the company. And also for the company, lots of media projects that we are responsible for.
Yeah, that actually sounds fun. A lot of variation in your day-to-day,
totally.
For sure. So let's talk a little bit about leadership and how you sort of found your way into a leadership role. When did you know that was what you wanted, and how did you pursue that opportunity?
Yeah, it's a really good question. You know, I don't know that, probably like a lot of folks sometimes coming in thinking that's like where you want to end up. So I'd say it was probably about 15 years ago where I really started like, where's my next part of my career going? And I love events. That's my passion. So I've been fortunate through the years to work across an incredible group of people and projects here at this company to do that. But it was really about that 15 years ago that I think others first saw in me the leadership potential and really starting to kind of think about, what does that path look like? What does that mean? Does that mean people management? Does that mean, leading a broad team? Is it leading teams of teams? And so that's kind of when I started to set that path forward and really start to utilize my network to better understand what are the competencies and skill sets I need in order to do that, and really gravitate towards, helping a group of people get to a common goal and move out of, the day-to-day creation of events.
And you moved up here at Microsoft, correct?
Yeah, so like I said, I feel very fortunate that I've been able to make, over the last 27 years, a career here. And that really took, a lot of work on my own to kind of think about, where do I see opportunities? It took time, meeting one-on-one with my managers to share some ideas and explore. One example is, there was a time where I saw an opportunity. I was sitting in event marketing, but I saw that there was opportunity to provide that marketing lens in the operational side of the business. And so I had a really supportive general manager at the time who was willing to take a risk on that idea, allowed me to move into that role. And so then I was able to learn more about our vendor supply management, how do we source events? How do we go do that? Really think about the impact to the financials for the company, And so that, I think, again, has also led to why I sit in a position today, because not only do I understand the making of the events, but also understand the broad business concept and what we need to bring forward to our leadership and how we would operationalize them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you can manage upward and you can manage down.
Yeah.
No, that's really helpful. What are some of the big challenges that you've encountered as you've pursued this leadership opportunity? Are there challenges that you faced as a woman leader that you've had to overcome? Give us a little sense of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the biggest challenges as a female leader is staying true to your own confidence of the skills and the work that you've put forward that got you there. And being able to own that. And it doesn't mean being braggadocious about it. It's not about being arrogant. It's really just being confident of like, yes, I've been asked to take on this role or do this particular work. I do have a seat at the table, and being good with that. I think sometimes we might call it imposter syndrome, so not letting that kind of get to you. So I used to do, and I still do to this day, simple things like if I were to go into a meeting, say it's an in-person meeting, am I taking my space at the table, right? Not shrinking back. There might be others, and many times there always is, other people in the room that have, higher titles than I do, or I perceive them to have more experience than I do. But knowing that I'm there for a reason and take my space, put my things out there, be part of the conversation. Or in a Teams meeting, going on camera, being part of the conversation or moving things forward in a way that maybe doesn't feel always comfortable. Because again, you can get into your own head, make that imposter syndrome come out. So I think that's a very common challenge many females and probably, just leaders in general can face many times.
I love that. I had a woman tell me once, she made it a point to not be a potted plant in a meeting, that she would always contribute something so that she felt like there was, people were hearing her voice in the room, and she tried to make it a meaningful contribution, but I think that's just such a great takeaway.
And like you said, whether you do it, verbally, whether you're doing it in a chat, especially if it's a virtual meeting, or even it could be afterwards. Following up. And I think that's the other thing is remembering, hey, there can be some things you can follow up on that help lend to the conversation because maybe in the moment or in the time it wasn't the right time to kind of, speak that or say it or you hadn't thought of it. So making sure to follow up too. Sometimes I think that can be something we forget to do and still have a very powerful impact for whatever the discussion, the project is.
It was so lovely to talk to you today. Thank you for doing this.
It was so great to meet with you, and thank you again for coming here. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for hosting us.
Yeah.
All right, so you're getting a real sense of my wardrobe today. Everything in my closet. For those of you who just walked in, there's plenty of spaces over here, and there's plenty of spots to sit, and there's some spots at the tables, so please make yourself comfortable. All right, so now I'd like to welcome our illustrious panel to join me up here. And we'll talk about some of the same things that you just heard me talk to Vivian about. So I'd like to introduce and welcome Jennifer Lemaster, who is the president and CEO of the wonderful space we are in, the Washington State Convention Center. Welcome. Thank you, Jennifer. Wherever you want to be, pick your chair. I'd also like to welcome Mari Horita, who is the senior vice president of our city's hockey franchise, the Seattle Kraken. Welcome, Mari. And of course, I would also like to welcome Emily Cantrell, who is the president and CEO of Seattle's big summer festival that everyone's a fan of, Seafair. All right, they've got us on stools here, so try not to fall off. Very high. All right. Jennifer, I'm going to start with you, since I know you're relatively new to the city, so welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your path to the role that you're in, and maybe any challenges that you had to overcome in order to get there.
Okay, so I'm sorry. How much time are we going to take? Okay, so path to get here, I started out my career in college sports. I thought I wanted to be an athletics director, and then I kind of took what I thought was an experimental journey into the NFL because I thought I wanted to just sort of see what that was about, and I ended up in venues. But the common theme has always been live events, and that has been my passion. I think if I didn't do what I was doing, I could have joined the circus because I like the big top going up and all the people coming in, and then all the people come out and the big top comes down, and there's something about it that's still, after all these years, almost 30 years in the business, there's a lot of adrenaline. So I'll stop there and I'll come back to challenges if that's okay.
Of course.
Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, same question, Mari. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your path to the Kraken?
My path is, I don't know if there's a traditional path, but if there is, mine definitely is not it. I started off as a commercial real estate lawyer in Seattle and did that for a number of years. And then I was the president and CEO of Arts Fund, and now I'm the senior vice president of the Seattle Kraken. So that's the career path. And
Very logical.
Yeah, so a little different than Jennifer's, but I think the through line there, and I think also that ties into events, is I'm very motivated by and find purpose in community building, and particularly at the region in which I'm living, and whether I was a lawyer working on specific issues or at Arts Fund, really looking at the arts and cultural sector, and now the sports sector, and then also Downtown Seattle Association and working with the Convention Center and different civic organizations. There's that through line. I will say that I tell my daughter, who's 20 and she's a junior in college, not to worry about her major because, it doesn't. I was an Asian studies major. I had that career, and here I am. So for any of you who are not really sure if you're on the right path to where you're ultimately trying to go, don't give up hope. Just kind of keep an eye on the things that you love. And as far as challenges goes, there's a lot of challenges. I think, interestingly, in my job now, which is very male-dominated, there really, I would say, are not challenges specific to being a woman, but I think that other than those you'd find anywhere else, but I think in part it's because we're a very new organization. We are 6 years old. We're in our 4th season, and I was there from the beginning, and one of the reasons I joined this organization is the vision of our CEO and our leadership to try to do things differently and try to write a new narrative and a new playbook in sports and entertainment that really includes everybody. And our owner is a female. We hired the first female pro scout in the league in Cami Granado a number of years ago. As many of you know, we hired the first female assistant coach in the league, which is kind of a big deal. And about 40% of our staff, including people in all different levels and different departments, are women, and that was very intentional. So there are challenges. Not that you said advice, but if there is any, I would say there's always going to be challenges, but if there's too many challenges, then maybe it's not the right culture to be in.
I like that. All right, we'll dive into that a little bit more in a minute, Mari. But Emily, please tell us a little bit about your path, which I know is equally circuitous.
It is a windy path, that is for sure. So I never knew what I wanted to do growing up. I knew that I was good at writing, and so after college, I got into local television news, and I spent almost a decade in newsrooms here, working my way up from writer to executive producer. But as much as I love doing that, I'm a people person, and I missed being out and about and meeting new people. So I got into tourism and hospitality, which I loved. And I was working at Visit Seattle when the new CEO of Seafair came walking down the hallways. And I pulled him aside and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing this and this and this?" And he ended up hiring me. And so I got into festivals and events. And then after that, I made my way over to World Trade Center Seattle. And that is where I really began to form a passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and using the platform that I had there to just work to bring the community together, to bring leaders together, to help them feel comfortable being uncomfortable, and putting on just some really important conversations that can lead to better unity and understanding. And it was when I was working at World Trade Center Seattle that I was in Las Vegas for a country music festival. And before I knew it, found myself in what would become our country's deadliest mass shooting. So this was something that happened to me personally that has changed me also professionally. I wound up going back to school, got an executive MBA, and decided whatever I did, I just wanted to try and make this world a better place. So I've worked in economic development and human services since then, but then this opportunity came up to rejoin the Seafair team, this time as president and CEO. So I came back in September, and I love it. I feel like it is just the perfect place to be. There's nowhere else that I would rather be. And everything that I've done in my career has really led me to this point. And if I had to pick a common thread, because I was thinking when Jennifer was talking, I can't think of any commonalities between my positions, But I think it is creating community. It's bringing people together, whether it's producing a newscast or breaking news that everyone, well, back in the day, would tune into, or putting on panel discussions, or here at Seafair, bringing together tens of thousands of people for an event. I just love creating community.
That's great. Well, I want to talk a little bit about those through fairs because I think that's a really important thing for folks to hear a little bit about. You know, all of us came from very different backgrounds and then found ourselves in leadership roles. So I'll start with you, Jennifer, because you were short in your initial response. So I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. Talk a little bit about how did you know that you wanted to be in a leadership role? How did you pursue that?
Well, I didn't think that about myself that way, but obviously there was something inside me that other people saw because people pointed it out to me. I was typically the person that was leading the group projects in school, or I was the person that was like, you say it, you know, that would be the spokesperson on behalf of the group. And so, no, I didn't think about leadership in a formal way, but certainly I think other people saw those skills. I think what I thought about the most was I wanted to be excellent. I really wanted to be thought of as very, very good. And so I just think that that opened doors for me. I think that there is no substitute for doing the work, and people recognize the results, and then that gave me opportunities to lead. And so then I had to learn how to lead. And I don't think for anybody it's really intuitive how you lead other people, particularly leading leaders is extremely difficult. So I learned that along the way.
No, that's great. The leading leaders piece is really interesting. Did you know, Emily, you were talking about taking your executive MBA. Jennifer, was there anything that you did that, you know, to sort of think about how to develop your own leadership plan?
Yes, I have spent a small fortune on EQ so I could know about myself because apparently I would take all these assessments and I would read it and I'm like, I don't do that, do I? And my husband and all my loved ones would look at me like, yeah, you do that all the time. So I'm like, apparently I need more assessments. So self-awareness, I think, is critical. And I took them all. If you want to talk about assessments, I can tell you all about all of them. I can start with my Enneagram. I can work my way through there. But I think learning what it's like to be on the other side of you for the people that have to work with you, especially when your job carries a title that enters the room before your personality does. I think it's really, really important that you know how you show up and that you know what causes stress and how you can impart that on others and what that feels like to them. Because, not to get long-winded on this answer, but the weight of our words are massive. And so you can't go into situations unprepared because it just weighs too much to the organization.
That's such a great point. Mari, I saw you shaking your head there. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I was shaking my head on everything she said. So I think a lot of us, when early in our career, yes, we're thinking about career evolution and advancement, but I mean, I never really thought about I want a particular leadership role until I applied for that arts fund job. But at the same time, necessarily over time, you do just kind of get into leadership, unofficial leadership roles, and you know, as you were saying, do you step up to them or not? And what does leadership really mean? Is it a title? Is it? It's not really a title, actually. It's like, are people going to follow you? Are you able to move people along with you? And that shows up in so many different ways. And sometimes, you know, you're out there and you're on stage and, you know, you're the one kind of out in front. And other times you're really quiet and people might not notice you, but you are actually creating change and motivating other people. So I do think it is important to know who you are and understand what kind of leader you want to be and can be, and still be really authentic to yourself.
Let's talk a little bit about building teams. I know that's something that's really important to you, Emily, and you know, you and I have talked about that pretty extensively over the years. Can you just talk about your approach to that and how you think about that?
Oh, I wasn't prepared for this one.
I'm putting you on the spot.
So, yes, I want to touch on that previous question, though. Just say, when I was younger, I never wanted to be at the top of a company. I thought it would be a really lonely place, and I'm a lifelong learner, and I thought, I never want to be the smartest person in a room. But to answer your question, That's not what leadership is. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. And so when I form a team, I try and find the smartest people out there who are all experts at what they do and bring them together and just help get everyone moving in the right direction. It's the saying, none of us is as smart as all of us. I just think having the right team where everyone can contribute in different ways, bounce ideas off of each other, making sure it's a psychologically safe environment where people can speak openly and freely without fear of retaliation or being punished. These are all things that come to mind when I think about building teams and leadership.
One of the things that I've heard a lot of folks talking about recently is this concept of humility and leadership and humility. And I think it has really resonated with me. In some of the positions that I've been in recently, there's been a lot of humility that I didn't really know what I was doing and had to figure it out. And you do have to rely on your team, right, in order to successfully do that. Mari, you're at a startup organization, more or less, right? Can you talk a little bit about moving into a role like that, coming from Arts Fund to a sports organization? How much of your leadership was also tied to just kind of having the humility to say, I don't know really how to do this?
Absolutely, and I think humility is a huge part of it, and that's, to me, when you actually have confidence, when the people say, oh, you can't show humility because it shows you don't know what you're doing, and that's not confidence, and I don't know, I think increasingly now, studies show that, real leaders have what you talked about, that humility to say, I don't know, and that was a great idea, and to lift other people up and not always have to be, as you said, the smartest person in the room. So yeah, going to the Kraken, I didn't even have a job description. So I had met with the CEO, Todd Lewicki, because one of our donors at Arts Fund said, you need to meet the CEO of the new hockey team coming to town. I'm like, what hockey team? And he said, I had no idea. I have no background in hockey, but you meet with any C-suite person when you're running a nonprofit. I'm like, okay. So I met with this guy. There was 8 people in this makeshift office. The franchise hadn't even been approved yet. And we just had this good conversation. I obviously didn't ask him for money for this arts organization, but we talked about what we were trying to do at Arts Fund and really be more representative and inclusive. And he talked about what he had done at the Seahawks and the Wild and the NFL. And one of the reasons he was coming back to Seattle to take this role was to try to do something really positive and powerful for the community and really for everyone who lived here. So I'm like, great, nice to meet you. Figure I'd never speak to them again. And then they called back the next week and essentially offered me a job. And I said, well, doing what? And I was like, the stuff we talked about. And, so it was very vague. But so talk about not knowing. Like, I didn't even know what my job description was. So yeah, tons of humility. And I think we're at a bit of an advantage, though, because when you're that new, you can openly say, I don't really know what we're doing yet. And because a lot of my job was reaching out into the community to bring the community in, we led with that. Like, we are a new organization. We're bringing a hockey team to Seattle. We want to hear from you. We want to understand how to be good community partners. So we're inviting you into this event. We realize hockey has not historically been the most representative or inclusive or welcoming sport. We want to change that, and so we want to hear from you. And I think that is what we've tried to continue to do, not always, perfectly, but certainly that's been our approach. And it seems to work for us and what we're trying to do.
I think you've got some fans. No, thank you for that, woo-woo. Mari. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, me, I'm a fan. Woo woo.
Yeah, exactly. So Jennifer, maybe you can kick us off just talking a little bit about what some of the challenges have been to women moving up in the ranks. I think when you look at the event space, when we look around this room, it's a female-dominated space, but you don't always see women at the top of these organizations, and I think that's true in a lot of industries. It's certainly not unique to events, but from your point of view and your experience, are there specific challenges that you've had to overcome?
So I think there's 2 things that I would say relative to that, and I totally agree with what Vivian said in the video about the whole imposter syndrome, and that's not really new because we've probably all sort of heard that in different sessions of, like, women want to check the box on every aspect of the job description before they apply, et cetera. But I think there's something that's more practical than that. And as leaders of organizations, I would just point you to mid-level management positions, because that is something that all the research that I've seen refers to as the broken rung. And it's the time in which in a woman's life she considers having children, if she's going to have children, and so then in some way her career probably stalls a little bit or maybe even stays level. And so then people start progressing beyond that. And it's called the broken rung. And so if you could figure out how to retain more women in your leadership roles in their 20s and 30s, which is when a lot of women are expanding their families, then you would fix that by adding 1 million more women a year into leadership. So the issue is always going to be access. No matter what group you're talking about, it's always about access. The issue is how do we fix the access issue? And we've got to fix the access to childcare and the way that our organizations respond to those of us who have people in our homes that we care for, whether it's children or now I found out that we're called the sandwich generation because we are caring for children and also taking care of aging parents. And so there is a demand of our time and of our capacity. And I'm not saying it's not true for men, although they told me this would be 75% women, this is 98% women, so I can say whatever I want, right? Okay. But in all seriousness, I think the pandemic in some ways sort of shook our culture, and it certainly did in my family and in my household and in a lot of the households that I'm familiar with, where men who had traditionally been outside the home did not realize all the additional mental load that women carry, even if you have 2 income families where both people are working, there's usually somebody that's running the ticker in their head about doctor's appointments and homework assignments and poster boards and social issues with their kids, and it just typically wasn't men. And then they were in the home during the pandemic seeing it, and I think it really was a culture change and sort of a sea change that we're just now seeing some of the results of. But anyway, I'll stop there because I don't know where I started.
No,
Thank you.
Great.
But I would add, though, companies also need to support that. So if it's parental leave, if you're saying you want to have the duties split equally, it has to be addressed not just with the women in the workplace, but also the men.
Yeah, that's a systemic thing that needs to be all the way through the organization.
And I think it's so important for events. This is what I was going to say, is that we are in the live event business. For my team, who has been kind of in a hybrid environment for many years following the pandemic, and we came back to the office, I say 5 days a week, that's just BS. It's 7 days a week if you're in the event business. But we needed to be downtown because we're trying to revive downtown, and this is where our customers are. And also, you have to think about maximum flexibility. You have to build that in because we are in an environment where we are being asked to exert ourselves to our maximum capacity and to achieve at lightning speed. And then you have to give people time to recover from that. And I don't know what it's going to look like in your organization. We're still figuring it out on ours. I just think being aware of the fact that people cannot your job as a leader is to set and maintain a sustainable pace. If I never take days off and I'm always on email and I'm always responding, then I'm setting the tone for my organization that is what is required of everyone else. So I may do those things, but I need to be sensitive to when I contact and how I contact and what time of day, and is someone on break, and am I following up with them while they're on vacation, et cetera. Am I taking calls and making myself available when I'm on vacation, because now I've just told my whole leadership team that that's what I expect of them. So I think you have to be really mindful that the way you work may not be the way your organization needs to thrive.
Such a great point. I have a friend who's the managing partner of a law firm, and when she had a little one at home, I think he was 4 years old when she was promoted into that position, she made a point of saying at 4 o'clock, I will leave every day to go pick up my son from daycare. And it was on her schedule, it was on her open calendar so everybody could see it, and to send the message that that is a normal thing that the managing partner of the law firm does, and therefore anybody can. So I love your point, Jennifer. Emily, I'm hoping you can kind of get us talking a little bit about mentors, sponsors, people who have kind of helped you along the way. Nobody gets to these positions alone, and I know you've had some really influential folks in your life who've been supportive to you over the years. Can you talk a little bit about, folks who've kind of given you a push or a boost along the way?
You are actually the one that comes to mind.
This was not
no, we haven't talked about this. But growing up, I wasn't used to women supporting women. There was a lot of bullying going on in my childhood days, and didn't always get along with the women in the room. And I first met you at World Trade Center, Seattle. You had just become publisher of Puget Sound Business Journal, and you handed me a microphone one day and asked me if I wanted to say a few words to a group that you had in there. And from that point on, you continued to open doors for me and connect me with people. And that was so new to me. And so that was really the first time I felt like I had not just a mentor, but what I like to call, and this is actually from Jamila Conley, if anyone knows her, but she was talking about the difference between mentors and sponsors. Mentors can help guide you, but a sponsor will actually get you to a table or open the door. And so I would say, I know you weren't expecting me to say that, but
I was not.
yeah.
No, thank you very much. That's very sweet of you. Mari, you must have had someone behind the scenes who maybe has supported you over the years, or somebody who's been an advocate for you. Can you talk a little bit about what that's looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you said about you weren't used to women supporting women, and I think there is certainly a time I used to work at a law firm, which is very different from the managing partner, being a woman and then saying she's leaving at 4 to pick up her kid. It was a very, very different culture way, way, way back then. And there's a scarcity mindset, almost like, well, there's only a few women partners and there's 100 guys. So as a woman associate, what are the odds? And it's sort of, whether it's spoken or not, it was like you're competing against each other versus helping each other. And I think that was the culture for a while, not created by us, but there. And then I think when we realized it's there, Madeleine Albright's great statement, there's a special place in hell for women who don't support women. But then you realize, oh, these are my allies, these are my sponsors. But until that point, most of my mentors and sponsors were men, just because they were in those positions. Judge Richard Jones, who's still one of my best friends and the chair of our board, he was more of just a role model. Like, I want to be like this guy who overcame everything and faced massive discrimination and then rose to the top of his profession with nothing but kindness and grace in his heart. So when I'd get mad about something, I'm like, okay, well, he's so nice, I can't really be that bitter. And then someone like Jim Dwyer, who I don't know if anyone knows, he ran the Port of Seattle for a number of years and was a managing partner of our law firm way back then. And just, as you were saying, saw something in me that I didn't see at the time when I had the imposter syndrome. I was sure everyone in the room was smarter than me. And he's like, nope, let's come to this meeting and do this. And he also is still one of my greatest friends and advocates. And following up though what you said about going into the room and feeling insecure, I have also found time and time again that the people who speak loudest, most loudly, and with the greatest conviction often know the least. So for those of you who walk into a room and like, oh my gosh, that person seems so smart, that is not always and often the case. Just remember that.
I like the little asterisks there. That's good. Jennifer, what about you? Folks kind of behind the scenes who've been supportive to you.
Well, I have only been in the market for 6 months, so the people that I would name you wouldn't know, but I would say this, that I have been very fortunate to have started my career in sports, where mentorship is just part of the culture of sports. There's always people who have sort of been there helping those people who are just starting out. It's just sort of embedded. So I saw it really early, and it inspired me to develop my own personal board of advisors. And as I've gotten older, more mature, I have started to diversify my board of advisors because I realized one person can't do everything. So I have people who are great subject matter experts. I have someone in my network who's a brilliant negotiator, and he has helped me with every contract and every assignment that I've done, and I've gotten great deals because he's always been that person, you need to ask for this, and I'm like, of course, there are things that I would never ask for on my own, but I'm like, well, he told me to, so I'm going to try it. And it worked. It's crazy. So there was that. And then there are people who are the sponsors. They're the cheerleaders. They're the champions. They're the people who, when you're not in the room, I know they're going to say nice things about me because I know them that well. So it's like I know who those people are. And so I think it's important that you have a good mixture of people who you can learn from and develop your skills, and then people that are going to be your personal hype people who are out there with your name on their lips and they're ready to say it when there's an opportunity. Because as hard as you work, everybody knows opportunities happen because of connections and relationships. Somebody says, I know a person.
I would also say shed the detractors, which I figured that way too late in life. But if the people are bringing you down or kind of, chipping away at you, just get rid of them.
That's so great. I love this concept of building your own personal board of directors, though. Somebody said that to me years ago, and I've really taken that to heart. I think 2 of the 3 of you are on my personal board of directors.
Can I join? Because I know I'm not on it yet. Okay.
So welcome to my personal board of directors. And I actually do have an actual list of people that I reach out to. And I think, Mari, I love what you said about shed the detractors, but don't shed the people who call you on your bullshit. Because I think that there is a certain amount of that, right? Like we all get into our own heads and it's easy to, kind of believe your own hype sometimes. And it's really important to have somebody who will say, hey, maybe you should think about that a different way. Has anybody had an experience like that where somebody has helped them kind of see a different path that you'd be willing to share? I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, I would just say that I love what Mari said, because I've always thought about people providing feedback. It should be like the 75-25 rule, that's about how much mail that comes to my house that actually makes it inside is 25%. The 75% goes in the recycle bin. So if we took feedback and things that people said about us and looked at it as, okay, is this constructive? Am I going to take this on the inside? Or is this just go in the recycle bin? Like, hey, thanks for playing, moving on. I think a lot of even well-intentioned feedback is a little bit of what do you call it? Passive-aggressive jealousy. Yeah.
Passive-aggressive. You've settled into Seattle real quick.
So tied to both of that, I mean, right when you talked about detractors, I was about to say the same thing, because I had one review at an organization where I was told to either be the last person in the room to speak or just don't speak at all. And it was at that point where I had a realization that as much as I loved this organization, it wasn't right for me. And I had to leave after that.
Yeah, that's such an important, and it's important to understand the privilege that comes along with that, right? Like, not everybody can just walk out of their jobs, but it's good to know, too. Like, even if you can't walk away in that moment, sort of recognizing that that is the reality for you, and it's time to start looking for other opportunities. I so appreciate you sharing that, because that's such an important moment. I want to talk, we only have 3 minutes and 31 seconds left. I want to talk a little bit about, just briefly, about the qualities that you all look for in folks who have the potential for leadership opportunities in this industry. So kind of quickly, just when you're talking to other people kind of moving up in the industry, what qualities, skills are you looking for? You want to start us, Mari?
Hard workers. Integrity, so you can trust them, that's huge. Team-mindedness, humility, lifelong learning, just to name a few.
Adding on to that, I usually look for soft skills and then enthusiasm and passion, because you can teach people the other skills that they need to succeed in a job, but if they lack the passion, then you're in trouble. But also, we've conducted a few interviews recently, and my colleagues in the room, Lauren, but we flat out ask, how do you feel about zip ties? How do you feel about mesh? Because you might have manager or director in your title, but you can't be above anything, especially in this industry that we are in. You never know when you're going to be loading up a truck or dealing with honey buckets. So someone who is just eager to take on anything.
That's great. How about you, Jennifer?
Yeah, I agree. I think critical thinking skills is one I would add, but definitely all the great leaders that I follow and that I think are worth following are learners. And so I think I would be very suspicious of people who think that they have the answers and know all the answers. I listen carefully for people who ask questions and want to know why and help me understand that. So I listen for the interrogatives, because those are the people who I think are trying to learn.
Curiosity. That's such a critical thing that you just can't teach. People who have curiosity. I love that. All right, we only have a couple minutes left. What kind of advice do you have for the folks in this room now? We're going to get to do a speed networking session, so you're going to get to hear this directly from them, as well as some other wonderful people who are here to share their advice. But does anybody have any quick advice for folks who are looking to move to leadership roles?
Yes, I do. I know you all are surprised. So mine is a little bit of a gendered comment, so just forgive me, but I want all the women in the room to get real serious about their financial lives and to think about their finances like a business and not sort of outsource this to someone else, because opportunities go sort of hand in hand with options. And if you don't have choices, then it's very hard to pursue those great opportunities when they come. So I would say start with that. Some really practical things I could tell you that I did, but I would just say start with that. And I know so many of my friends who don't have any idea what their savings looks like, what their retirement situation is. And so I just say, women, take control of your finances and you'll take control of your life.
Amen to that. Anybody want to offer anything else?
That is unexpected, but really good advice. I would just, and we've talked about this before, but it's really understanding why you want to be a leader and that you're doing it to lead, not to put yourself out front. Because I think you're not going to be successful unless you're actually trying to help and move others along.
Love it. Go ahead, Em.
Say yes. Be open to opportunities. Be open to alternatives, but say yes.
Love that. I love that. Well, thank you, Jennifer, Mari, Emily. That went really fast. Thank you all so much for coming. We're going to do a speed networking session. Devin's going to kick us off.
I'm going to take it away one more time for our panelists up here. And, of course, Emily Parkhurst as your moderator.